Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About It. This is Taylor, your host, and I hope that you all are having a lovely week. This is our first full week in a new administration. Holly frickin' Luya. Really excited to hopefully see some change going forward. Really hoping to continue to see folks advocating and understanding that just because we have a new administration doesn't necessarily mean that things like white supremacy are completely solved. So I hope that y'all are continuing to feel motivated and putting in the work. I am so thrilled to have today's guest on. Really looking forward to this conversation. I feel like she's amazing. Have heard absolutely wonderful things about her. So before we get started with her, I do just want to make a quick note here on The Bachelor. I have been back on Twitter at Taymocha, same as Instagram. And I've also been kind of sharing my thoughts on Instagram about the show. So for some of my thoughts on that, I would definitely pay attention to those platforms. And speaking of Instagram, the podcast page is almost at 10,000 followers, and that'd be an amazing milestone to hit after doing the podcast for 3 years now. So if you don't follow the podcast page, please be sure to. We've got it linked here in the episode notes that you can check out, or you can find it on the bio on my page, or you can just search for it at Let's Talk About It _podcast. So please give us a follow there. And if you haven't left us a review yet or a star rating on iTunes, also super appreciate getting those. And I love the constructive feedback of which were your favorite episodes, of what episodes you want to see more of. I totally understand. I think there was one on there about audio quality, and it's really hard when everything is remote now. Our guests don't always have the best setups, but we definitely do try to make sure that the sound quality is up to par and is enjoyable for y'all. There might be a little bit of poor internet connection sometimes there, but a lot of that is also out of our control. So I do appreciate your understanding there. But yeah, I do read the reviews, and I do want to make sure that y'all are getting out of this what you hope to, and that it's kind of meeting your expectations, and that you also hold space for when maybe it does make you a little bit uncomfortable. That's kind of the whole point of doing this podcast in the first place. So just briefly here on Bachelor stuff, I just want to say a lot of what people are getting so upset at this season with the bullying and the name calling and just the shaming of women is nothing freaking new on the show. I very much experienced that on my own season, and there was no, call together of, well, let's actually really discuss bullying and let's, have accountability. What even is that in Bachelor world? Having accountability for understanding that your words are going to impact other people. And accountability, I think often when it is geared towards white women, we tend to feel defensive, and we tend to feel like, oh, well, now you're attacking her. And accountability is not attacking. It's not cancel culture. I really don't subscribe to cancel culture. I think that's really harmful. So obviously I don't wish bullying on any of the women who are actually bullying other women on this season or on any other season. However, I do believe that accountability is really important. And I'm going to be really blunt here that the rewarding of Victoria on this season by production is really fucking upsetting. She was on this week's episode explicitly threatening violence, wishing violence, shaming other women, and yet they put her on Good Morning America. And if we really want to talk about change going forward, right? Wanting to hold the franchise accountable, wanting to see representation. It's not enough to just have representation when there is still centering of white women, when there is still no accountability, when the behavior is such foolery. And I know folks are like, well, don't make everything about race. You're making it all about race. Race is in everything. Race is in everything, and everything mostly comes down to race. So, if this were a Black contestant or a Asian contestant or, anyone from a BIPOC community on this show behaving the way that Victoria was, oh, dear Lord, they would never be put on GMA. Never would they be put on Good Morning America. And it sends a message that behavior is entertaining, that behavior is funny, that's the behavior that's going to get you ahead, that's the behavior that's going to get you opportunities. Same fucking thing we saw on my season, okay? And it's really so ridiculous even that it's like, wow, okay, yeah, it's been 5 years later and I'm, the same very similar type behaviors just continuously rewarded. And, again, I highly recommend following Bachelor Diversity Campaign because they are always calling for things, not just like representation, but for airtime and for that to be quality airtime. And, they could have definitely given that Good Morning America spot to someone like Chelsea, who shared about how hair is emotional, right? They could have given it to someone like Michelle, who came in with such just Black girl magic on this episode. They could have even honestly given it to Brittany to discuss, the false allegations of her being an escort and talk about, hopefully I would hope she would advocate for this. I don't really know, but, to advocate that like sex work is work, right? Like there's so many other opportunities of quality women of color, of Black women on this show that could have had that Good Morning America spot, that could have had that access to, a greater audience. And it might seem so trivial that it's like, oh, well, it's just an interview, but it's really not just an interview. And the interview itself sends a loud and clear message. And it's not, again, that like I believe she should be punished, but I don't think that she should be rewarded. And an appearance on a major platform like that is a reward. It is a reward. It is not accountability. And I know we will see her again. I highly doubt that there will have been any kind of personal growth or acknowledgement or apologies on her end. Let me tell y'all, the gaslighting that we saw, I mean, I definitely had to take a moment to be like, first of all, very proud of Katie because she did not give into it. She was very strong and she was very adamant to maintain her self-respect and her dignity and did not allow Victoria to yeah, it, and I did, I had a moment of like, okay, yeah, wow. That was like very similar to what I experienced in like a very shitty 2-hour fuckery conversation. And I gave into it and I apologized and I tried so hard to be so nice. And so it was really, really awesome to see Katie stand up for herself and for people to like have her back on it as well. I haven't really seen a lot of the other cast members from the season support her, and I would love to see more of that because she does seem to be the one that is really actually calling out all of this, like shaming of other women, which is, again, nothing new on the show, but is like, let's move forward here. This is already a show that people associate with not being very feminist for rightful reasons and already feel really shitty watching because of that. And because of how we have these dates of, well, are you going to really show Matt how much you want to fight for him, how much you're willing to fight for his love? And in a lot of ways, it does feel like a setback. It feels like very frustrating to watch and even to participate in. So again, I didn't write down notes on this and I wasn't sure I was going to say anything to begin with at all, but there were just so many pieces in this week's episode that felt really disappointing. All of this around being an escort, the way that that's thrown around as if it's this really negative thing. And it's like, okay, are you concerned that she's seen other people and therefore isn't interested in Matt? Are you concerned that she's going to be using Matt to try to get his money? Are you concerned that she's going to try to still see other men while also dating Matt, even though she's getting paid for it and it would be her work? Like, what is the actual concern here? And the concern just seemed to be that, she's not someone to trust because she's an escort, because she gets paid to hang out with guys who make a lot of money. What's wrong with that? Nothing is wrong with that. Well, first of all, it is wrong because it wasn't actually true. So that's harmful in and of itself to be spreading a rumor or saying something about someone that just factually isn't true, because then they have to defend themselves and they have to, kind of fix their image and fix their name to actually show who they authentically are. So, I think the overall sense was just that she would be a slut. Well, actually, it wasn't even the overall sense. That was literally what Victoria said. Called her a slore. Not just taking us back like feminist wise, that's taking us back to like fucking middle school with that word. So sex work is work. I believe everyone that listens to this podcast probably understands where I stand on that. I've had many sex workers on the podcast. I support them. I would love to see them have more quality and protection and work environment. And we don't get that by looking at it like, oh, she's an escort. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I had Jasmine, Jet Setting Jasmine, on the podcast in the episode Bust an Ethical Nut, her and her partner King, and did a Instagram TV live video that's still up on my Instagram right now, talking about sex therapists and sex work. And in that Instagram live, we discussed even what sex work is. And it really, it could be a wide variety of things, right? Like modeling could be a form of sex work, right? Like we are all using our bodies and using what we have, using our brains, which is a part of our body, and many times in many different outlets and careers are people using their sexuality in order to get paid more and just get paid in general. And we don't look at that negatively, right? So many things so many ads, I'm sure that some of y'all have even bought on Instagram. Those likely had an element of sex to them that is what was selling. That's what people say, sex sells. And there's really nothing wrong with a woman wanting to take control of that and make her coin with her body, period, point blank. So I'm happy to see that Katie's calling that out. I feel bad that Brittany has to deal with backlash on that. And I wish that there wasn't even backlash on it to begin with. And I feel like there was the kiss. I think there's definitely a double standard here. We did see Bennett kind of like forcefully kiss Tayshia, which was incredibly uncomfortable to watch. But, we saw Brittany come in real hot and just go forced kiss onto Matt. And that made me very uncomfortable and I think lacked full consent. But I think there is a double standard, right? Where people would look at that as like a guy would want that and he would never turn that down, which in some instances that might be wanted, but that's never a guarantee. And men are just as deserving and worthy of feeling emotionally safe in their sexual experiences and to have consent, to have full consent into those experiences as women are. And I think it's really important that we not lose track of that, because that is also a part of patriarchy that impacts all of us, not just women. That also puts men at risk to be in situations and to have, possible sexual dysfunction or disappointments within their own experiences because they aren't considering their emotional safety, because they don't think that consent is something that is relatable to them, but is something for women. So that was a piece that also came up for me. There was just honestly so much in this entire episode. This episode is sponsored by Blue Chew. let's talk about something that we could all be using a lot more of right now and really probably always, and that's sex. And this sponsorship is going out to all my penis havers out there because, sometimes your penises are not going to work in the way that you would like them to. And that can be really frustrating sometimes. So I want you to listen up because Blue Chew can help give you a little bit of extra confidence in the bedroom because Blue Chew is bringing you the first chewable with the same FDA-approved active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis. You can take them anytime, day or night, even on a full stomach, so that you can be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Blue Chew is made in the USA and it's prescribed online by licensed physicians, so you don't have to go into the doctor's office or wait in the line, and it's even cheaper than a pharmacy. And they prepare it and ship it right to you in a discreet package. So there's no awkwardness and you don't even have to leave your house. So right now we've got a deal for our listeners. You can visit bluechew.com and get your first shipment for free when you use our special promo code Let's Talk, and you just pay $5 for shipping. Again, that's BLUE chew.com with promo code Let's Talk to try it free. Blue Chew is the better, cheaper choice, and we thank them so much for sponsoring this podcast. And remember, when you support our sponsors, you help make this podcast possible. So please be sure to use our promo code Let's Talk at bluechew.com. So I want to switch gears now, and I want to introduce you to who my guest is going to be for today. We also talk about patriarchy. So I'm going to be talking with Luna Matatas, and she is a sex and pleasure educator. She's got over 10 years of experience in sexual health and wellness internationally and locally. She really has like a playful approach to sexuality, and she draws on creativity, confidence, and communication skills that we really all need to fulfill our pleasure potential. She teaches people how to build a better relationship with their bodies, practice empathy with their partners' insecurities and their needs, and how to get curious about their erotic imagination. Luna's classes are trauma and equity informed and include pleasure topics like anal play, to feminine dominance and to how to have a threesome, which I know is something that a lot of y'all are interested in hearing about. We won't really talk about threesomes today, but definitely in a future episode. So with all of that said, I hope that y'all enjoy my little bachelor venting, ranting moment here. And now we can, let's talk about it. All right. Hello, Luna, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yes, same. I feel like we've been trying to do this for a while. You've been on my list to have on for quite a while because I know I've seen you work with Dr. Jess, who we've had on the podcast, and she's amazing. And she has spoken so highly of you, Luna, like so highly that I was like, okay, yeah, no, we've got to get Luna on here.
Yeah, likewise, the love from Jess for you was also, I was like, I have to meet this person.
Yes. Well, that's one of the things I love about just entering into the field of sexuality. I feel like everyone is a connector. Everyone's really passionate about what they do here. And it's like a really special group of people. And I feel like it's also kind of a small world, small community.
Yes. We're a tiny little universe, but we've got like big hearts, big energy. Yeah.
Yes. And you've been in this field for over 10 years. Would you mind sharing a little bit about kind of what got you into the field of sexuality in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about my journey because I think there's so many different ways to get into this because it's such a mismatched kind of field and like we have to hodgepodge ourselves together.
Yes.
But I started very much from a public health perspective. So I studied health promotion and health communication. And my first few jobs were working more frontline with communities that didn't have access to HIV/AIDS information and like STI stuff. So I was working in Eastern and Southern Africa and very much focused on HIV prevention, and then came back to Canada and worked with LGBT communities and seniors in sex and just like all these marginalized groups. And it came to a point where I was like, okay, so I can talk until I'm blue in the face about condoms, and people are still like, yeah, but how do I get her to eat my butt? And how do I get him to do this? And so I started to explore through the feminist sex positive shops, because they're the ones who are offering classes and education, just like teaching 1 or 2 classes here or there. And, like 4 years later, here I am and doing pleasure-focused sex ed. And that I come from a background that is not sex positive. And so, I'm learning and growing as I teach others to learn and grow too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about like the importance of this education being pleasure focused and kind of, I know in your coaching and even in your webinars, you talk a lot about confidence and pleasure. Can you talk about why that's important in general and maybe why that's important specifically for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when we get our sex ed in high school, it's so much about reproductive and like how to get pregnant or how not to get pregnant. And it really doesn't explore a lot of the skills that we actually need to use when we're having sex, like how to talk about your desires and how to explore fantasy and how to communicate your yes and your no. And I think that when we just kind of give people the bare bones information, like here's where to get a condom, it doesn't give them the skills to actually apply the tools that are available. And our sexual health really needs this access and this representation and this like exploration stuff to be actually useful, or else we're just kind of staring at a bunch of technical information. And for me I didn't grow up knowing how to talk about my fantasies or, how to communicate. And so pleasure-based sex ed has also built my confidence in that I need to be able to listen to my body. I need to listen to my emotional safety needs. I need to listen to what makes me feel comfortable and not just kind of be dragged along by what the other person wants for the sake of obligation or this is how it's supposed to be or expectation.
Oh, that I got triggered. I heard obligation.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Are you a people pleaser? Because I'm a people pleaser.
Well, when it comes to sex, I think so much of what women are taught is that they do have an obligation to fulfill the needs of their, cis heterosexual, heteronormative culture that we live in, that they have an obligation to please their man sexually. And there's so little to no conversation at all on, in fact, in some instances, actually, it's completely gone against, right? That it's like, don't even go there. Like, no, you are not even entitled to, you are not even deserving or worthy of the things that make you feel good. This isn't about you. You need to fulfill this in order to be, cared for, in order to be provided for, in order to be worthy of someone loving you, quote unquote, however we're defining love in that scenario, right? So that word obligation, I think just in our culture around sex for women, I'm like, oh, I have felt that.
Yeah, same. Absolutely. And that obligation makes us normalize things like pain during sex, or I don't feel like it, but it's Tuesday or Valentine's, or, and really never centering even pleasure that isn't dependent on erections or, kind of cisgendered heterosexual men's pleasure. Like it's not focused on what women actually need and what they want. And we kind of set up our sexuality to be like, well, that's cool. That's the way it's supposed to be. And it's not. We're busting that, right?
Yes,
no.
Definitely. All right, we're going to take a short break right here to share a new sponsor of the podcast, Hire My DJ. And if y'all are like me, you do not enjoy going to a gym and you really just don't do it. Your form of working out is maybe more just moving your body and a more fun, entertaining, creative way to actually enjoy exercise. So just imagine yourself being able to effectively work out from the comfort of your home by using fitness party downloads with an animated DJ that will teach you and your family new dance moves. That's right. You can exercise and learn new dance moves at the same time at hiremydj.com, where health is fun. Your fitness party will be delivered to you as a digital download. Just visit hiremydj.com, choose the DJ that you want to hire, and purchase your digital downloads and get the party started. It's all about fitness and family fun and just moving your body. But to get 25% off, you're going to want to listen. So you can go to hiremydj.com and use this promo code FUNHEALTH25 to get 25% off. Once again, visit hiremydj.com and use the promo code FUNHEALTH25. And I hope that y'all enjoy this new sponsor of the podcast. And now we can get back to the show. You spoke about, in a way, you know, through the sex education that we do get, that there are things to kind of unlearn. And, you know, as I'm reflecting here on just the word obligation, I know that's something that I've had to kind of unlearn and really get focused in on communicating my desires, my pleasures, as you spoke about. What's something that you've had to kind of unlearn throughout this, you know, throughout your 10 years kind of in this field, maybe kind of first getting into it?
Yeah. One of my favorite things is that, you know, sex doesn't have to end when the penis ends, and that it can continue beyond that. We've got sex toys, we've got fingers, we've got, you know, sensuality, we've got hands and mouths and tongues. And there's this expectation that we're kind of racing against, you know, the orgasm and the ejaculation of penises. So I think that was a huge one for me. And whenever I drop that in a room of women, you get this kind of like, wait, what? kind of look, right?
Yeah. Sex doesn't end when the penis ends? What?
Yeah, like, who are you having sex with? I'm like, the same people you are, but I'm just setting different standards.
Yeah.
I think another big one is I never knew about the clitoris. I didn't learn about the clitoris in school. I had no idea that it was I mean, I knew from touching my own body, but I didn't know that it was such an important part of vulva pleasure. And I think really being able to use our communication to direct to that kind of pleasure is something that we all have to learn, because we're kind of just like, oh, well, penis and vagina or P and V is like the thing. And that's great too. That's so much fun. But it really, most vulva owners are not orgasming from penis and vagina.
Yeah. It is really wild, the amount of focus and emphasis on vagina and penis in sex ed. And it when you actually learn about the clit, it becomes so much clearer how pleasureless our sex ed is. The fact that the clit is like the one organ in the entire human body that we're aware of whose sole purpose is for pleasure is like, hold up, y'all was keeping a secret from us this whole time. Like, what? I've been cheated. I've been robbed of this. How the fuck is that not in our sex education?
I don't know. You're right. I feel robbed.
Yeah. Because it's like the clit needs to be included in our sex education. It is so important. And yeah, like you, I didn't learn about the clit until, I mean, I think I had always known, because it's like kind of that joke, you know, of like, oh, well, can you find the clit, you know? But then it's like, you don't want to be a burden, and you don't want to be like, oh, well, yeah, you know, can you find it? Or like, yeah, like you need to pleasure me. So then it doesn't even become a focus for me until like early mid 20s of then being like, oh, wait a second.
Yes.
Does need to be a focus.
Yes. And you said such an important word there, that idea of feeling like our pleasure is a burden. And so all of these like, you know, countless magazine articles that say things like, oh, you know, vulvas are harder, women are harder to make come, they're more complicated. And it's like, no, you just didn't even give us the freaking manual for how to do the thing. So
like you left out the one spot that would just fucking get you there like that. Like, no wonder.
Yeah.
It's pretty ridiculous. And I feel like, I mean, I'm going to ask you this question, but I feel like this is what brought you towards Peg the Patriarchy.
Yeah.
So what? We got to talk about Peg and the Patriarchy, because this is the one thing. This is on your bio on Instagram as well. And this was the first place I had ever seen this phrase. And I remember saying like, this is my kind of person right here. And just like, it was just so to the point. And I was just like, I fuck with that. That's exactly what we all need to be doing. Pegging the fucking patriarchy. Can you share with us kind of how that came about for you?
Yes. And it brings me no like endless delight of when people like you are like, that's my person. Like that person gets me because of Peg the Patriarchy. It has brought so many cool people into my world. And I coined Peg the Patriarchy in 2015. And it was about like, I was starting my pleasure education business, and I came up with it and I thought, this is so cool. And so taking everything that we've learned about, how to behave under the patriarchy. So everything from conventional beauty standards to toxic masculinity to, burden, our pleasure is a burden, all that stuff, and really subverting it and then embodying that power so that it actually becomes self-serving. And there really is something really powerful when we occupy the power that we've been told is not for us or that is power over us. And so pegging becomes this metaphor for fucking the patriarchy or smashing the patriarchy, but it really boils down to this idea of like really eliminating all of these systemic barriers that are impacting our pleasure. And so how we think about our bodies, how we interact with other people's bodies. I mean, consent would be, something that was really focused on somebody else's pleasure and your pleasure, and not about like trying to have to negotiate, am I going to hurt this person or not? It would just be rooted differently in the way we have sex.
Yeah. All right, time for a short break right here, and we're going to chat some delicious food for a sec. This is a sponsorship coming to you from Magic Spoon. I've talked about it on the podcast before, and growing up, I would have cereal literally every morning for breakfast, and I know it was full of sugar and a bunch of junk that I really should not have been eating, but now as an adult, I get to enjoy, that childhood feeling of eating cereals like cocoa and fruity and frosted and blueberry, and the taste is really good too, but it has 11 grams of protein and none of that stuff that I don't need. It's keto friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low carb, and GMO free. So go on over to magicspoon.com/Taylor and you can grab a variety pack to try it out today. But be sure to use our promo code Taylor at checkout to save $5 on your order. And Magic Spoon is so confident in their product that it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. That's magicspoon.com/Taylor and use the code Taylor to save $5 off. Thank you, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring this podcast. And now we can get right on back to the show. I had definitely heard of like smash the patriarchy, right? But pegging the patriarchy, it's different. It's different. And I'm thinking too, for some of our listeners, they might not fully understand the like concept of pegging, right? Like of fucking, yeah, but maybe kind of the context of pegging within sexuality and why you would use that term specifically in relation to the patriarchy here.
Yeah. So pegging is a form of strap-on sex. And so strap-on sex can be manifested in all different kinds of fantasies. And so pegging came about from Dan Savage, who was an educator, a sex educator and a columnist. And it was in the early Yeah, exactly. So it's local to you. And and he really had this opportunity to kind of reclaim some of the anal pleasure for cisgendered heterosexual men who liked receiving anal sex from mostly women. And so they came up with pegging as a way of capturing that activity. But really, pegging is anal sex for everybody else. You take something up your butt, it's anal sex. But this is a specific fantasy that kind of subverts the role of the woman being the receiver and the man being the giver, and so it allows someone to be the penetrator and who's not normally the penetrator, and vice versa.
Yeah, I experienced that a few years ago with someone I was dating. We did a lot of like cuckold stuff, and like pegging almost came into play with that. And I remember talking to a fellow sex therapist who's been on the podcast, and she was like, oh, Taylor, I feel like you would love pegging. She's like, I feel like you would love it. And I was like, I don't know. I've never done anything like that before. And I wasn't so sure like how I felt about it, because for him, it was in this like demeaning way almost that it would turn him on. But for me, I didn't I don't know. I didn't fully fit with that yet. And maybe had we explored it a little bit more, then it would have felt differently. But that was the first time that I had ever like considered like, do I want to peg someone? Do I want to peg one of my partners? Like, would any of my partners like be open to even being pegged? Like, I don't know, but like opened up this whole other world. And she was just like, Taylor, like you should definitely like try that. It seems like it.
It's like, yes, put that on the to-do, the fuck it list of things that you want to do.
Yeah, she was like, it brings out like a different side of your personality. And I was like, well, yeah, I can imagine because I've never really fucked anything. I mean, that's not going in my vagina.
Yes.
Or my
absolutely.
ass. Like it's,
yeah.
I feel like it'd be a totally different mindset that you're in doing that.
Yeah, you're so right. And I think the assumptions around that it has to be humiliating or that the person strapping it on has to feel more masculine. I actually feel a lot more feminine. I feel this like different access to a specific type of femininity in strapping it on. And so I thought I had to be more butch or more masculine when I was strapping it on. I was like, oh no, I can draw in all the things that I like about other types of sex, like sensuality or touch or kissing or the idea of being inside someone, even in the fantasy in itself, feels so sexy for me. So I think people also use it for gender fuckery. They might use it to play out a specific fantasy of power exchange where one person's submissive and the other person's dominant. Or it could just be, hey, like, I don't want to be the top today. I don't want to be the penetrator. Like, can you do me?
Yeah. Like, hey, I put in a lot of work already. I'm feeling a little tired. Can we switch it up a little bit?
I had a new appreciation for how much work it is to be a top and thrusting. I was like, wow, I am not in shape. Like you need to like train for pegging.
Girl, just when I go on top sometimes, I'm like, I'm like, I've been watching my partner. He's sweating up a storm. I'm just like, yep, good job. Thank you. Yeah, you work it. You work it, baby. Like, I'm just going to cheer you on. I appreciate this. You're working out those ab muscles.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is always a reminder when I am on top of like, I'm really out of shape.
The only reason I want to be fit is to be longer, like longevity in sex.
Yes. Need to improve my cardiovascular health so that I can fuck more.
Yes.
Essentially. But yeah, the pegging piece, I think for folks, maybe now that they kind of understand a little bit more of that background, pegging isn't something I've really talked about on the podcast before. And I think is something that's pretty left out of our heteronormative mainstream sexual culture. So thank you for explaining that. And I think hopefully that puts pegging the patriarchy in a little bit more context for folks. But I love that you coined that term and that you're working it because it's so good.
Thank you.
And yeah, the patriarchy, it really fucks with our sex.
It does.
Really fucks with our sex. I've been
really
considering, I'm in a PhD program right now and considering, what my dissertation will be. And I kind of made a joke in one of my classes of like, my dissertation is going to be how white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy, which are both created from white supremacy, are killing our sex lives.
Oh my God, please do this. Please manifest this joke into a thesis. Yes.
I was like, it'd be a lot of work. But yeah, it's like so many of the things that I am learning throughout this, kind of expanded version of sex education and sexual health and pleasure. Everything I'm having to unlearn is coming from either capitalism, patriarchy, or white supremacy.
Yep, same. Absolutely. Yeah, I found the same thing. I think when I started to see how those were all connected and how they really influenced so much of what I thought was just normal or this is just what people do, but it was uncomfortable for me in some way or it didn't feel quite right. It really changed even my approach to things like dating apps. And I'm banned from so many apps that...
Why are they banning you?
So I think I think it's the way way that the algorithm, the patriarchy is in the algorithm, right?
Absolutely. So, and white supremacy.
And white supremacy, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So the first site that I got banned from was OkCupid, and they banned me because I guess I was mean to men, but mean being like I didn't want to talk to them, or I said no thank you, or I didn't respond, or I didn't respond with I'm coming over tonight. And so you can be reported for any of these things, right? And it's just the matter of amount of reports. And so I got banned from there. And I'm pretty sure that's what happened with the other apps that I got banned from, is that I just wasn't behaving in a very submissive, obedient, sugar and spice kind of way without being rude. But I think patriarchy hurts. It has no gender. It hurts everybody. Yeah. And so also men are set up to kind of believe that there's an entitlement to being spoken to or treated by or, access to women's sexuality in a certain way. And so for them, it's quite a shock to be like, oh, wait, you have a desire that is different from my penis? And now I have to negotiate around this? What is this?
Yep. And oh, well, I've said that I want you now and you're not just automatically also interested in me too. What?
Yes.
Easy, sir.
No. Yes, exactly. So I think it's really frustrating for them too. And it's quite scary for the rest of us who are like, whoa, where's all this anger coming from? Where's all this violent language and threats? And the systems are not set up in a way that kind of recognizes that the behavior is different based on things like patriarchy and white supremacy.
I mean, you just let me know what other dating apps, and I'll be sliding in some DMs to these brands. Excuse me, this is not okay.
Yeah, we're coming for you, Tinder. Yeah, we're coming.
But really, it's oh my gosh, messed up. All right, it's time for a short break for a little mental health check-in. Friendly reminder that BetterHelp is here to help you live a happier life literally today. BetterHelp is an online service with licensed professional counselors, not a crisis line, but professional, convenient, affordable therapy. You can have therapy via the phone or video chat or even text with the therapist that they will match you in about 24 hours. It's also free to change and really easy if you're not matched up with a counselor that you feel is best meeting your needs. And the services are available for clients worldwide. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are actually recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. So be sure to check them out. And as a listener, you will get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/talkaboutit. Again, join over 1 million people taking care of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/talkaboutit. And now we can get back to the show. And I mean, all of that, experiencing those things, are essentially happening in order to push you to conform, to punish you for not conforming.
Yes.
And so I'm wondering how you navigate all of that and still approach sexuality from a place of confidence. I know you do a lot of one-on-one coaching with people. You also do couples coaching with people. And I know that has a focus on pleasure and confidence, and how dealing with all of those things and our fucked up sex ed, how do you focus in on confidence? How do you work to get people there?
Ooh, yes. I think that's my favorite part of everything that I do is really nurturing this idea that you can have the confidence they're telling you shouldn't have. And really reclaiming this idea that my validation for my needs, my desires, my safety has to come from other people. So it's a reclamation process. And it takes a lot of unlearning. I think people want to hear put on red lipstick and heels and then you'll feel sexy. And it's not so much about arriving at a destination of how you look or, 10 pounds from now or 10 years from now. It's much more the sexual confidence actually comes from a place of feeling like you belong in your sexual experiences and that you have a right to be there and you have a right to pleasure and pleasure is all of our right. But things like feeling burdened or feeling obligated really takes away from that entitlement to pleasure. And I try to teach people how to reconnect and build an erotic relationship with with themselves on a daily basis. And so that could be just like, meeting your gaze in the mirror when you're washing your hands and like smiling at yourself and winking at yourself or giving yourself permission to feel cute. And because whether you're in a relationship or not, you still need to build that connection to yourself so that when you do get into a sexual situation, you're not digging deep from the depths of, eroticness. Your cup is full and someone else gets your overflow.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's something that I've been working with clients on, that when it comes to several of my clients actually, and a lot of people, a lot of listeners as well, struggle with just body confidence in general, right? Like, which again, from patriarchy and from capitalism,
hello,
and from what's I say, but struggle with body confidence, of feeling like, well, I'm not that Victoria's Secret model. I'm not. My body doesn't look like that, and I've been told, that no one's going to want to date me if my body looks like this, and working with them to reach a place of almost kind of acceptance and neutrality first before reaching that place of confidence, at least has been my approach and has seemed to be helping. But I feel like that's a huge piece of what I see in terms of people struggling with confidence in their sexuality, is just first struggling with like body confidence and acceptance.
I think that's dead on. Excuse me. I think that there's so many seeds that are planted in us that are telling us that we're not enough. And so to even move into, as you described, like this place of just acceptance, like this is the body that I have and it is capable of pleasure. And there is a huge untapped potential for pleasure in it. And that can feel way better than, I remember feeling I'm a plus size person. I have a skin problem, and of course we're all aging, nobody's like our,
except for J-Lo somehow.
Except
like,
for J-Lo. I know, but J-Lo is going to be, just sort of ageless over there. And for the rest of us, we've got to kind of work with these changing bodies. And so building this acceptance, I love that you talk about it, because that's what's going to carry us through all of these changes. That's what's going to carry us through partners who don't accept us. If your partner's afraid of you gaining weight, that's a problem. And that's really about, sexiness comes from so many other things. Like if you ask people what's sexy about someone, they might describe physical things. They might also say, someone's laugh or someone's smile or someone who's kind or someone who's confident in their body. That's regardless what their body looks like. If they're owning it, that's hot. That's so sexy. So I love this acceptance piece and really not relying on physical attributes as having to conform to that white supremacist patriarchal idea of beauty and sexiness. Like that's only like 1% of us who've been, airbrushed and put up on Instagram, and it's not happening. Like other people who don't have those bodies are having really good sex.
Yeah. Yep. It's really a mindfuck when you do start to unlearn all of this stuff, because it's like, what in the world?
Yeah. What have we been told?
Any of that? Why have I been operating from this perspective that I disagree with so much? And that's why I think like a lot of self-compassion comes in, because you have to be kind to yourself. You have to understand you're not alone in it. And you just got to be mindful of how you feel throughout the whole thing. And again, from kind of a place of acceptance that, a lot of this was out of your control, right? Like you didn't choose to get the sex education that you got. Like you just got that and it was shitty, and now you have to unlearn it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I love that self-compassion piece, because I think I never get to a point where I feel completely accepting of my body. And there are days where I want to change it. I would trade it in. I want to erase it. And in those days, I have to be like, let's give ourselves some tenderness, because this stuff is hard to unlearn. And there are huge industries that are billion-dollar industries that are benefiting from me feeling like shit.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
That's powerful. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Very, very, very powerful. I want to switch gears a little bit here, because I notice that a lot of what you do talk about, what you teach about, is around anal. And we just talked about pegging a little bit, but we've talked about anal a little bit on the podcast, but I want to get more into this in terms of anal gasms, and I've seen that you do some work around that. And I feel like anal has become such this like scary thing for people, both like cis men and women. And wondering, first of all, like, how did this become such a prominent topic in the work that you cover, in the work that you do? How did anal and, experiencing pleasure in our anuses become such this thing?
Yeah, I know. How did I become like the butt stuff lady? I don't know. But I think it's because I would go to a workshop, or I'd be invited to a home party or a bachelorette party, and they'd be like, oh, we want to learn about blowjobs or hand jobs. And no matter what, it always ended up in anal. And so I was like, maybe I should teach this. And I think it's because anal is taboo. It's alluring. It feels kind of naughty. Everyone has a butthole, so it's like the great gender equalizer. And so for some people, anal sex is a spot for pleasure, and for other people, it's like, I'm not really into that. And then there's people in the middle who are like, well, I might be into it, but I'm worried about poop on my partner. I'm worried about discomfort. I'm worried about pain or having to wear diapers later in life. And so there's all these myths around anal sex, and anal porn is so popular. And anal porn is it should be our muse instead of like a script for how to do anal sex, because it's performance.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of even people I've had sex with in either receiving or giving anal have felt like they're fucking like a porn star, and then that's really hot. And I'm like, we need to slow this down. My butthole is not in the mood for this. I am, but my butthole is not. We have a dissonance here. So, I
feel so seen right now. I feel so seen. We got to slow it down. I know when you watch it, they're just right there. Oh, that's not what's going to go down right here. You got to go slower, please.
Yes. Please do not break buttholes. They do not like to be broken. So I started teaching more about anal pleasure anatomy, and you're right, like anal gasms and how do you bring pleasure to the anus? It doesn't have to be dependent on penetration or hard thrusting, but really understanding, like, how do you maximize this pleasure in the same way we had to learn how to maximize pleasure of clitorises and for penises and for other body parts.
Yeah. I had a client who was interested in experiencing anal sex, but she was really scared of it, and was really scared that, the first time she did it, that it wasn't going to be enjoyable, that something was going to go wrong, that it was going to be painful. And so I kind of started to ask her about what her first experiences were like with penetrative vaginal sex. And were those really pleasurable right off the bat? And, was that painful for you? And she kind of got to a point where she was kind of like, okay, I get what you're getting at. Like, the first time you do it, you don't know, and that doesn't mean you don't try again. And I was like, it's okay for it to be a little bit scary because you haven't done it yet, right? And, after you first have vaginal penetrative sex, you might realize, I didn't really like that, or maybe next time we need to do this differently. And kind of similar when it comes to like approaching anal sex, I feel like, because it does, there's so many like associations to it that like, and we kind of walk through those too, right? Of like, what are those words that just come to your mind when you think of a woman who's having anal sex, right? Like dirty, whore, for cis men, right? Like, what do you think of when you think of receiving anal play? I'm gay. Okay, well, no. As Dr. Joe Court says, your anus does not have a sexual orientation, okay?
Yeah.
It does not.
Yes. All of these like assumptions around, like anal sex. I love all the puns. I love all the booty puns. Yeah. Bring me the booty puns.
The assumptions. Yeah, we got to look for our assumptions.
Exactly. Because anal pleasure anatomy doesn't work like that. And this like poke, stuff it in within like 5 seconds. It doesn't give the anus enough time to get aroused, and it doesn't give your body enough time to like sink into this new pleasure. So it doesn't actually fit the way that the mechanics of anal pleasure works.
Yeah. You got to warm it up first.
Absolutely. And most people think that, spit is lube, and, like spit cute. It's not lube. Like, you don't lick your lips when you need chapstick. So don't do that to your butthole. Don't put chapstick on your butthole, but don't put spit on it either.
Absolutely love this conversation right now.
Me too.
And so recently, I feel like I've seen you share your work and tips and whatnot around butt plugs. Can we talk about like why someone would use a butt plug and how that comes into play with anal sex?
Yes. I love that question because I think people are like, why do you just want to put something up there and leave it up there? And it goes back to this idea of like thrusting is the best thing to do. But actually the ass needs anal training. And so the rectum has tissue and muscle. And so the tissue needs to get, slowly tougher with smaller penetration leading to bigger penetration. And the muscle needs to get more flexible and kind of build up as we get into more penetration. So moving from a pinky finger to a penis, it's too big of a jump for most people. So most people really need an opportunity to kind of play with either a butt plug during masturbation. You could put a butt plug in during penetration so that your body's already responding to other pleasure that you like and your butt's just kind of relaxing around the plug. Yeah. So in addition to adding sensation and pleasure, that fullness within the anus and all those delicious nerve endings get stimulated by butt plugs, especially vibrating ones. It just adds to this like overall anal arousal. Mm-hmm.
So does our poop not train our anuses in that way? When I first had anal sex, I kept telling myself, that's not about to fit in there. Not about to fit in there. And then I was like, literally, like as it's happening, I'm like thinking about like, okay, what's like the largest poop I've ever had? Have I had a poop that was as big as my boyfriend's penis? And I was like, you know what, Taylor, you have had some huge poops. You're going to be okay. We're gonna fit this in because you've had some really large poops. Does that have people said that to you before?
Yeah, absolutely. You are amongst the poop champions that I've heard this from. And the monster poops, yeah.
Because like the training piece like makes sense, right? That like certainly for some people going straight from like, a pinky to a penis is too big of a jump and you might not be relaxed even, right? For that to even, for your anus to even be open, for the muscles to even be relaxed enough to take that in. But I definitely went from finger straight to penis. But maybe that was because I was just very relaxed.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're very relaxed, that's totally good. And if your partner has taken time to like arouse you and you've got enough relaxation, you can move from that. Lots of people get frustrated moving from finger to penis because they'll experience like a burning sensation and they kind of push past it. They're just like, okay, I'm just going to take it because it's supposed to hurt, and that like burning sensation is actually your anal tissue micro tearing. And so we don't want these micro tears within your ass. So it might not feel like the same kind of discomfort as like cervical discomfort where it feels like you've been like punched in the gut. But it can feel like other types of discomfort that we just think that, anal sex is supposed to hurt. So I'm going to push past this and it'll be okay. But your poop doesn't really train you for I'm picturing you like at the anal poop Olympics with like, like on the podium being like, you had the gold medal for
I got my squatty potty with me. It's coming out. It's I definitely have experienced that burning that you're talking about. And that is usually when there have been times where I'm like, okay, I know this is just going to be like literally 30 seconds of this and then it's going to feel really good. So I'm like, okay, just let's do it. But then other times where I feel that burning and then I'm like, okay, wait, go back out. Let's grab a little bit more lube.
Yeah.
I'm going to like rub my ass around the tip of your penis a little bit more. And you're just going to stand there and I'm going to slowly work my way and push myself into you.
Yes.
You're going into me.
Yes, give the power to the bottom. You get to like control the depth. And I think that also helps penises, because sometimes penises will start to lose confidence in that they're trying to get it in, they can't get it in, and then they get kind of soft and they're pushing against the anus, which most of the burning is the immediate kind of like 1 inch or the rim of the butthole, which is that tissue is just so delicate. But yeah, like if you're doing this where you get to take control, and so you feel like I trust me to push down on my body, then that can also help you avoid a lot of discomfort.
Yeah, that's always been like what I tell all my girlfriends, like when they're going to have it, I'm like, no, you are pushing it in. He needs to just stand there.
Just stand there. Just be like a human dildo and you'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. This is the one area where it's not an issue that I'm out of shape and haven't like increased my cardiovascular health, because it's just hip motions. Okay. I'm just rotating my hips around the penis and it feels good. It's not a huge workout. And then once it feels okay, then it's like, then he can thrust a little bit more. That's always the biggest tip that I give, but I hear what you're saying too around butt plugs and just the fullness of it. Just feeling that weight and that heaviness within your anus, especially if you are also receiving, whether it's like, oral sex or, fingering or rubbing or hand job or whatever it is on the other side on your genitals, that just increases the pleasure all around. 'Cause I mean, your anus has a ton of nerve endings in addition. So
yes,
it's a lot of fullness.
Absolutely. And for vulva owners, butt plugs kind of like, some people feel that they push up and create more of a connection to the G-spot if you're being penetrated vaginally. And then for penis owners, I mean, you've got the prostate, which is going to get indirect stimulation from a butt plug.
Mm-hmm. And so can you talk a little bit about like anal gasms exactly? So for people who have penises in their prostate, like how do they reach anal gasms? Just through that prostate stimulation? I know it's like a walnut size inside. And
yeah, I love that your finger went instinctively to it happens to me too. I'm like, prostate. And I'm like, what are you doing, finger?
I've really only been able to do it like twice, I think, with one partner like years ago. And he already very much enjoyed it. Like he already knew that was something that he liked and was open to it. And every other like partner that I've tried it with, they haven't really been into it. And it's been something that they're kind of like, you can try it, but I don't really think anything. And then some were like, we've almost maybe got there where it's like almost starting to feel pleasurable, obviously using lube, obviously going really slowly. I have used gloves at times. But yeah, curious what your tips are on that.
Yeah. I mean, I love a glove. I think they just look sexy. I feel like, I'm like getting ready to like anally probe somebody. I
was like, I feel like I'm about to give you a procedure right now.
I'm like, be a good patient. Yeah. But with anal gasms, for if you have a penis and a prostate, an anal gasm isn't like a specific type of orgasm in the way that we talk about G-spot orgasms or like cervical orgasms or P-spot orgasm. It's kind of about bringing stimulation and arousal to the anus, and it may provoke or amplify other types of orgasm because you're engaging in sensation in the pelvic floor, in the anus, in all those nerve endings around the bladder. If you're doing prostate-specific stimulation or techniques, that can produce a different type of orgasm using the same kinds of areas, but with more intentional focus and stimulation to the prostate, which really, I mean, the prostate really likes, like you did your curved fingers. So it's got more of a curvature, and it likes firm and continuous kind of pressure. So I actually really like toys for prostate play because my fingers they just don't have enough. Again, I'm not in shape for anal fingering. And
I think that is literally my most recent experience that I had with doing that. We got to a point where like it was feeling like decently good for him, and he was like instructing me to like continue in that same motion, just like I was like, I don't know, like I was like, oh my gosh. But then I'm like, oh my God, but he fingers me so well. It's like, Taylor, get it together. Like, come on.
I know you're like, can I like switch out for the other hand, like real quick? Or like, will he notice?
Toys are important tools.
I know. I'm like breathing through a finger cramp. I'm like, we can do this. Just make it happen.
Yes. So is there a toy that does similar, like that finger motion? I feel like most of the butt plugs that I've seen are just like, they just go in.
Yeah.
Like they don't even necessarily really have like a curvature to them even, and then they vibrate, but nothing that's like, are there ones that are like in that finger motion?
Yeah. Any G-spot toys actually can be used for prostate areas. But I really like toys that have a little bit of weight to them. So if you're using like stainless steel toys, because that also gives more sensation with you having to do less. Yeah. And stainless steel toys, my favorite actually right now it's one called the Swerve, and it's from Lawand. And Lawand's got this like amazing collection of like prostate stuff and like vulva owner stuff. But I like it because it's already in that shape. And so whether you're using it just on yourself, if you're masturbating with it, or somebody else is using it on you, you just kind of rock it back and forth. And so there isn't a ton of, like, I feel like I'm giving really lazy tips for the lazy like, prostate stimulator.
We're apparently really like lazy lovers over here.
I know, I'm so lazy. But that
I promise I get into the blowjob piece, okay? I get into there, but like the hand motion, like it's no. I can
exactly.
Keep my mouth open now.
I know. And like one of your arms is going to be like way more built than the other one. I don't know.
It is. Yep.
But that can help it. And I think some prostate owners like stimulation to their penis at the same time, but some of them find it too overwhelming. So you might be getting anal stimulation to your prostate, but like your dick isn't hard, and that's okay. That you can still have an analgasm or a prostate-gasm that way too. Yeah.
I definitely find whenever I do have anal sex, my vagina gets literally like Niagara Falls wet. Like the most wet that I ever am in my life is when I have anal sex. Ooh. And that's when I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is no joke. Yeah.
Which makes sense. You're getting all this arousal, all this stimulation. And if your mind is into it because you like it, you enjoy it, you're having with trusted partners, then your brain is like, oh my God, how hot are we? How hot is this? And it just like sends more blood flow, more arousal, more opening up of tissue. And so it makes sense to me that you'd be like super gushy during anal. Yeah.
Yeah. It also reminds me, when we talk about those assumptions that people can make, one of the things I talked with my client about too, that I like afterwards was like, oh yeah, maybe I do that a little bit when I do have anal sex, of almost like taking on that personification of what those assumptions are, to where it is a little bit more taboo. And maybe that is what makes it a little bit more exciting. And maybe we can lean into that taboo-ness of like being a little bit more naughty, right? Or being a little bit more like promiscuous, right? Even if the act itself isn't necessarily factually those things, we can kind of get into the play of that a little bit. And maybe that is what adds to some of that fun.
Yeah, you said my favorite word, play. Like, let go of, whatever and lean into it if that feels good. If the shame is getting in the way of what you're doing, then yes, like, figure out a way, either communicate with your partner, like, hey, I feel this way. Like, can we get some reassurance that I'm not actually an anal whore or whatever? But if you get turned on by being a butt slut, then like ride that vibe, because when else do you get to experience that type of intense erotic emotion? It's contained to this experience. And so if it uses your arousal system and if it uses your pleasure, then rock it.
Yeah. I knew using that word play was going to resonate with you. I feel like you have a very, very playful, very engaging approach to how you talk about sexuality and, how you teach about it as well. And I'm wondering if you can touch on that a little bit. Like if that's something that's just really authentic to you, or something that, you found to be really important for some reason when talking about sex.
Oh yeah, I'm glad that you resonate with that, or that it resonates with you. I think that a lot of times we think that those awkward and silly moments that happen during sex, you sweat on your partner, or I've got a good like bacon pussy story.
Bacon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So any of the silliness that kind of comes with sex, we're told is, antithetical to pleasure. And really that goes back to that we think sex should be performance, and that it should look a certain way, and that certain people, are supposed to be more demure, and that means this, and it says something about who we are.
Patriarchy.
And I think patriarchy, yeah, let's just name it again. Like patriarchy, it's just, yeah, it really is like messing up my clit, and, and I don't like that. But I think when you start to play more and you let go of that perfection, like silly is actually sexy, and it becomes this joyous, this like, let's like, set ourselves free from all of these expectations and really sink into sensation. So play also helps people who have trouble kind of getting stuck in their head to get back into their body, because if you forget about what you're supposed to look like, smell like, taste like, and you're just like, oh my God, it feels so good to stretch my arm this way, or to arc my back, or to grind my hips, then you actually start to enjoy stuff better. Yeah,
absolutely. That's like the freedom of being in your sexuality.
Yeah.
Like really enjoyable and leads to a lot
So
of pleasure.
liberating. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, they worry about, do I taste bad? Do I smell bad? And that actually steals from your pleasure. Like you can't come on someone's face if you're worried about, do you smell funny? Do you smell like a vagina? Because vaginas are not supposed to smell like lavenders and roses. They smell like vaginas. Dicks don't have this expectation that they're supposed to smell like steak and cupcakes, and we still embrace the natural sense of dicks. There's no industry telling dicks to smell any differently. Yeah. Do you want to hear my bacon pussy story?
Yes, I do. I was going to ask that before we wrapped up. So yes, please. Bacon pussy.
Okay. So it was my birthday, and I had taken myself out for brunch, and I had bacon, and then my partner had come over in the evening. And so we were face sitting, and then we were 69ing. And then after I orgasmed, I went up to kiss his mouth, and I was like, babe, did you have bacon today? He's like, no. And then I was like, wait, I had bacon today. And so like the bacon flavor had actually gone into my vaginal fluids. And we were both so chill about it. He was like, oh, it was a little bit saltier than normal, but like, it's fine. And so when you have this, like this acceptance, I felt so free. I felt so like, oh my God, my body's just doing this thing. People fart during sex. I sweat so much during sex. Like, and if you get into your head about like, my partner isn't going to love me anymore, or I'm going to be completely undesirable to anybody on this planet if I ever fart during sex, or my fluids taste off, or you shit on someone's toy during sex or something like that. You really start to, you shrink, you tame yourself, you edit yourself in your sexual experiences.
Yeah. And we can't do that. We shouldn't do that.
No, I would have denied him bacon pussy. I mean, bacon pussy was delicious, apparently. I don't know.
I mean, and that really is amazing too, though, because that's just like your body doing its thing.
Yeah.
You know? Like that. And I hate that we get so much shame and we get so upset at our bodies for doing these things that are so natural and are actually working for us, but that we think because of what we've been told by white supremacy, capitalism, and patriarchy, are things that we should feel shame about.
Yes.
And it's bullshit.
Yes. The Holy Trinity is like fucking us up. Like, I think even with period sex or, all kinds of things that really our bodies are just doing what they're doing. Or we have all this stigma around people whose bodies are differently or like have different capacities, or maybe someone comes really quickly, or someone has erectile dysfunction, or like all of these different things doesn't mean that someone is any less sexy. It just means, oh, cool, I have an opportunity to learn about how to pleasure you.
Yeah. Everyone's going to have a different little sexual roadmap, and it's a really fun, explorative adventure to figure that out. It's going to be different for everyone. And I wish and I hope that we can approach that with more excitement and curiosity and adventure than this like pressure and stress and performance or obligation, right? That we can move away from some of those things. And I think one of the huge reasons why people are even able to do that is because of people like you that are doing this work to where people are actually able to start unlearning this stuff and have safe spaces and fun spaces to learn about sex. I feel like everything on your page, like you make like very fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I'm so glad that's the vibe, right?
Yes.
Like welcoming, fun, safe. Yeah.
It's definitely the vibe. You always have like your big smile on and I'm like, she's having so much fun out here.
I really am. I'm like, my life is, I'm like, I have my vulva puppet on this shoulder, my ass puppet on the other shoulder. Like, it's like, yeah.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I'm so happy that we were able to have you on today. I would love for you to share a little bit about your page, your webinars, your coaching, all the places that people can find you and potentially work with you or learn from you.
Yeah, thank you. I've had such a good time today, too. Thank you for this conversation. I'm sweating in good joy. It's my glow now. It's going to be my Taylor glow. On my website, I've got about over 30 on-demand webinars. So everything from like feminine dominance to threesomes to oral sex, all kinds of stuff up there that people can access at any time. Mm-hmm. And I am the lucky, I don't know, what is my life? And don't tell my mom that I am the host of an anal sex podcast called The Plug, which is sponsored by B-Vibe. And every week we're talking about a different anal topic. So we have recently covered prostates and we're coming up to analgasms, eating ass, and pegging are the next few. And I love to work with couples or individuals one-on-one because often that's a space where you get to center your specific desires. And my coaching is very much supportive and like, let's plan out what's good for you and I got you. And so this is a lovely opportunity, especially around this time of year where people are focused on, like diets and like new year, new this. And it's like, no, like you can change. Yeah. Stop it. You can edit or change whenever you want. And it doesn't have to be because some industry is making money off a campaign for it.
Yeah. So, Tell it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Oh, he brought up ass eating and I'm like, yeah, we didn't talk about that, but that is a great topic as well. And you're going to cover that in the podcast?
Yes. We'll be talking about that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's an amazing topic. That
eat it like a donut hole. Yeah.
Nicki Minaj says in one of her songs, make him eat my ass like a cupcake. And that has always been like one of my favorite lines of any rap song ever. And if I'm like not even in the mood whatsoever, but like he just starts like kissing my butt and then like going in my crack. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm ready. Where you want to go? Yep. I'm here.
That's your button. It's your button. It's Taylor's button.
It is. It is so good. It's so good. Thank you so much for coming on. And we'll have the links to all of the resources, all the things that you just mentioned in the episode notes. So listeners, be sure to go and check all of that out. Luna, can you just say the name of your Instagram so people can make sure to follow you there?
Oh, yes. It's at Luna Matatas. So it's like Hakuna Matatas, but Luna Matatas.
Love it. Amazing. Thank you so much for everything today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that does it for today's episode. Thank you so much for making it all the way through and keeping your ears, your hearts, and your minds open. It would mean so much to me if you could take a second or two after listening to this episode to leave a review on iTunes and let me know what you're enjoying about the show. I love reading, what your favorite episodes are, where you guys listen, and definitely feel free to share this with a friend. I mean, part of how we break down the stigmas around these topics is by talking about them, right? And sharing them with more people. So definitely share the podcast. And again, really wanting to include all of you in this podcast. So if you have questions or you want to share a thought or an experience, please send in a voice memo to ask.letstalkaboutit@gmail.com. And I'm really excited to keep having these conversations and breaking down these stigmas. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time.
If you want to be the most interesting person at the cocktail party, well, hop on over and listen to the Brain Candy podcast.
Our award-winning content will have you laughing while you're learning.
We read all the best articles, books, and studies and keep up with new TV shows, documentaries, and pop culture. And then we cram it all into 2 shows a week.
Conspiracy theories, cannibal rabbits, unsolved mysteries, the history of the Walkman. There's something something for everyone.
The Brain Candy Podcast. Find our link in the show notes.
Or simply search for the Brain Candy Podcast on your podcast app.